This is an unremarkable, unmodified, albeit sun-yellowed Ascom Berkshire SD13 telephone. This most certainly is not. This non-standard blue telephone, it would seem, belongs to the UK Ministry of Defence. It's modified with a PTT, it's secure, and most definitely NATO secret. Its similarly non-standard red cousin is also marked Ministry of Defence property. It's also secure, and is UK secret. Its intriguing PTT is present. These phones certainly are remarkable when compared to their civilian counterparts, but what are they, what do they do, and who used them? The two systems these phones were part of are still to this day extremely elusive. There's absolutely no information online, and what I've pulled together for this video has taken a long time. If anyone can add anything, then please do so in the comments. The story of these phones stems from the Yugoslav or Balkan conflicts, the separate but related wars in that region between 1991 and 2001. The UK and NATO were involved, and by 1999, well into the late stages of the period of conflict, two large communication systems had been deployed in the region. They were Euromux and Ptarmigan. Euromux, I believed, was developed by Racal on a requirement produced by NIXMA, or the NATO Integrated Communications System Management Authority. It was designed for the interoperation of trunk communication systems operated by various NATO partners. It's my understanding that the Territorial Army used Euromux and it was a reserve system. Ptarmigan was the British Army's mobile, fully secure digital battlefield communication system. It was their first digital mobile telephone and data system operational from the mid-1980s until the early 2000s. It provided secure, reliable communication for soldiers and vehicles by creating a network of vehicle-mounted switches and radio relays, allowing for voice, data and fax transmissions. Ptarmigan was a precursor to the civilian mobile phone networks and included features like automatic registration and handoff between cells as users moved. By 1999, a substantial amount of Euromux and Ptarmigan equipment was deployed in a static role in Bosnia and Kosovo respectively, and had been for some time. Because of this, the Royal Signals Corps was stretched in terms of both manpower and equipment, and so it had reduced flexibility to deploy on new operations. By 1999, it was decided that Euromux and Ptarmigan would be replaced with a commercial off-the-shelf system, and in February 2000, BAE Systems was awarded the £20 million contract. There were two main projects in the programme that would replace Euromux and Ptarmigan. Euromux would be replaced by a system known as Myra in Bosnia, and Ptarmigan would be replaced by a system known as Cleo in Kosovo. The requirement for both Myra and Cleo was very similar, but the delivery and network solutions were completely different. Due to the difference in the footprint each would cover, and the terrain within that footprint, Myra revolved around a satellite-based system, and Cleo revolved around a microwave network. Myra came into service on the 17th of August 2000, and Cleo followed on the 4th of September 2000. Myra consisted of three individual subsystems: Blue, Red and Black. The Blue subsystem was used for in-theatre NATO secret voice-over IP communications and Internet Protocol data transfer. Serial communication sent data sequentially. Satellite links were provided by BT, Cable and Wireless and BAE Systems. You can see extensions for both Blue and Black sites in this Myra Blue telephone address card. The phones dialed into the system and had a PTT, essentially functioning like a radio. The PTT was installed so that the person on the other end couldn't hear background noise and conversations. If the caller didn't press it, the recipient didn't hear them. It provided an extra level of security and reduced the possibility of miscommunication or a message being misheard due to background conversations. The sites mentioned in the address card are interesting. As you can see, there's extensions in Šipovo and Glamoch, both towns in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and key locations during the conflict in the mid-1990s. You'll also notice lines to BLMF, the Banja Luka metal factory, which was a major NATO base in Banja Luka, Bosnia-Herzegovina, established in December 1995. MGBD was a base at Mrkonjić Grad, so I knew I was definitely on the right lines in my research on the origin of these phones. The Red subsystem was used as the UK Army equivalent of Myra Blue, providing secure VoIP and IP serial data connections as well as access into Patron, the UK's secret defence fixed telecommunications system known as DFTS. There aren't many more clues with this telephone as it's lost its address card, but you can see the UK secret marking. The handset's interesting because there's an extension to the Linked Operations Intelligence Centres Europe, or LOCE. It was the primary NATO system in Europe in Bosnia for the sharing of key intelligence through a correlation centre at RAF Molesworth in the UK. Finally, the Black subsystem offered voice and serial data connections. It replaced an unsecure VSAT system, and it's my understanding that Myra Black was unencrypted or unsecured, i.e. not used for classified or sensitive communications. Unfortunately, I don't have a matching Myra Black telephone. It turns out they were cream in colour anyway, but after some time, all sorts of phones were plugged into the Myra Black subsystem. So, just to clarify, if you were a British service member and had to pass classified or sensitive information to another Brit, both in the UK or in the conflict area, you used Myra Red. Myra Blue was the same, but used by NATO members to other NATO members, and Myra Black was for everything else. Interestingly, you'll note that my Myra Blue telephone has a label on the back. This indicates that this particular set was owned by the Koninklijke Landmacht, or Royal Army of the Netherlands. This telephone I thought was a Cleo terminal, but there's hints that made me initially think it could be a Myra Black terminal. I found a photo in which you can see red, blue and white telephones, once again confirming that Myra Black phones weren't actually black. This one doesn't offer much in the way of clues, but there's some which allowed me to identify it. On the handset you can see that this would have been part of an unclassified line. It's also labelled PTT, but there's no button on the handset. PTT was the local civilian phone service like we have BT. It's also marked as K4 property, K4 being a NATO-led international peacekeeping force and military in Kosovo. J6HQ is part of the Cyber and Specialist Operations Command. PGHQ is based in Northwood and commands joint and multinational military operations on behalf of the Ministry of Defence. J6 is responsible for communications and information technology, or CIS. This includes planning and controlling communication architectures, managing information systems, and ensuring the technology infrastructure is in place to support joint operations and exercises. I'm not certain as to why this phone is of Kosovan origin. At the bottom is a Cleo extension 2829. This address card has a few numbers but nothing of interest, but the Paradigm button is interesting. Paradigm supplies military-hardened satellite communications, primarily to the UK Armed Forces, but also to a range of other governments and organisations. This added to my confusion over whether this phone was Myra or Cleo because, don't forget, Myra revolved around a satellite-based system. It turns out that this is a welfare system phone, which worked via satellite links from dedicated cabins with 8 telephone booths inside. The word black refers to its classification as an unencrypted line, as the label on the handset indicates, but it's not a Myra Black phone. I've yet to see a Cleo telephone. The key features of Myra and Cleo was that the equipment was to be modern, off the shelf, could operate unmanned, and be remotely controlled and monitored from a central network control centre. The backbone of the communications network was the Net Promina multiplexer, which adapted and aggregated voice, data or video traffic for access to ATM and other WAN services. It provided voice compression on satellite links as well as serial and IP data. PABX or private automatic branch exchanges were provided by Siemens Highcom. This was essentially an automated private telephone network and switchboard that connected multiple devices and locations. Network control centres were established in Bosnia, Kosovo and the UK, and all terrestrial equipment was housed in transportable containers, which were air-conditioned and had uninterruptible power supplies and remote alarm monitoring. Each colour subsystem had its own cabin, in which traffic was encrypted, except for Myra Black, and sent via satellite. Of course, due to the nature of the communications that might have passed through each subsystem, it was imperative that the systems and their wiring were kept strictly apart. Hilltop sites in Kosovo were installed so that the microwave links could be set up for Cleo, and Bosnia was served by satellites at almost a dozen locations. The locations of the Cleo sites in Kosovo isn't known publicly. Other points to note is that these phones are different in that they appear to be custom made by Ascom, i.e. a third party didn't add the PTT. The sticker on the back indicates the model number, a custom Berkshire SD13, but with an RJ45 connector fitted, a PTT installed, and the special colourway. Standard consumer SD13s were only manufactured in white, bright white, beige and light grey, and if you have one that's a few years old, sun-damaged yellow. The MOD phones were manufactured in June 2000. My Civi model was made in February 1998, but I believe the SD13 originally came out in around 1995, but I can't be certain. So that's an overview of the extremely elusive Myra and Cleo telephone networks used in the Balkans at the turn of the millennium. If you have any information to add, then please leave it in the comments below.